Have you ever heard a story about two angels sent down to Earth who maybe taught humans magic?
It sounds like pure fantasy, right? But it's actually a real narrative rooted in the Quran.
Yes, specifically Surah 2, verse 102. But what's wild is how complex this story is and how much it's been, debated over the years.
So today we're doing a deep dive into these figures, Harut and Marut. Their mention in the Quran is, well, it's the core.
But the interpretations, they just spin out in all these different directions. It's fascinating.
Absolutely. We're talking theology, folklore, ancient history, all kind of tangled together.
And to unpack this, we've got a great mix of sources lined up: Islamic scholarly texts, ancient religious writings.
And even surprisingly, some modern debates happening online right now.
Our goal here is really to lay out the different versions of the story, look at how they've been interpreted.
And also get a sense of the bigger picture, like magic in Islamic tradition and its roots, maybe going back to ancient Babylon.
Because this isn't just some old story. It connects to ongoing theological arguments, even real-world stuff happening today.
You'll see pretty quickly, I think, that what looks like a simple mention is, well, anything but. Scholars, centuries apart, saw it totally differently.
Some views might really surprise you, actually, about angels, about divine tests.
Definitely. So let's start right at the source. Quran chapter 2, verse 102.
Okay, so it begins by talking about shaitans, devils, basically.
Right, who were practicing that's illicit magic during the time of Prophet Suleiman. You probably know him as Solomon.
And the Quran makes a point of saying Suleiman wasn't an unbeliever. It was the shaitans teaching this stuff.
Exactly, but then comes the really crucial part. It says they taught magic and what? Wama was sent down to the two angels at Babel, Harut and Marut.
Wow, okay, so it links the devil's magic with something connected to these two angels in Babel.
Yes, but with a very important warning. The verse says, Harut and Marut told people explicitly, surely we are only a trial, therefore do not be a disbeliever.
A direct warning. And what exactly did people learn from them?
The verse mentions magic specifically used to cause a separation between a man and his wife.
Ooh, that's specific. Like relationship-breaking magic.
Seems like it. But there's a really key condition stated right there. They cannot hurt with it anyone except with Allah's permission.
So, ultimate power still rests with God. It's not independent magic.
Precisely. And the verse ends with a strong condemnation for those who learn and use it. It says, they learned what harmed them and did not profit them.
Knowing they'd get no share of good in the hereafter. It really sets up the stakes, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Now, from this single verse, probably the most famous and, like you said, heavily disputed story grew up around Harut and Marut.
The fallen angel narrative.
That's the one. The popular version goes something like this. The angels up in heaven were looking down at humans.
And complaining about all the sinning going on.
Basically, yeah. Complaining to Allah.
Okay.
So Allah challenges them, saying, okay, let's see how you do, and sends Harut and Marut down in human form. Uh-oh. With human desires, right? That's the key part.
Exactly. They're given certain rules. No idolatry, no adultery, no drinking wine. But then they meet this incredibly beautiful woman.
Sometimes called Zura, or linked to the planet Venus.
That's right. And according to the story, she puts them to the test, demands they worship an idol, drink wine, have sex with her.
And in this version, they fail.
Well, they reportedly give in to the idol worship and the wine. Then, just as they're about to commit adultery, a beggar shows up.
Talk about bad timing.
Right. And to cover their tracks, the story says they kill the beggar, urged on by the woman. It gets very dark.
Wow. Okay. So what happens then?
Deep shame, naturally. They realize they can't return to heaven. They're offered a choice: punishment now on earth or eternal punishment later.
And they choose the earthly one.
Yes, which supposedly leads to them being hung upside down somewhere in Babylon. And even then, they continue to teach magic, but now as part of their punishment.
That's quite a story. And there's that variation too, right? Where the woman Zura uses magic words they taught her. Yeah, to ascend to the heavens, only to be transformed into the star Venus, a kind of permanent celestial reminder of their failure.
It's incredibly dramatic. You can see why it became popular. But as we said, it's not the accepted view for many scholars.
Not at all. There's a very strong counter-argument rooted in core Islamic theology. Major scholars like Imam Hassan al-Askari just flat out reject this narrative.
Because angels can't sin.
Exactly. The belief is that angels are inherently infallible, protected by God. Quran 66.6 says, they do not disobey Allah and do as they are commanded. Full stop.
So if they can't sin, how do these scholars explain the verse about Harut and Marut?
The alternative interpretation is quite different. They argue Harut and Marut were sent by Allah, yes, but not to practice or fall into magic.
But to do what then?
To expose it. Like a doctor explaining how a poison works so you can recognize and avoid it. They taught people what magic was.
And maybe how to counteract it.
Precisely. How to nullify it. All while giving that constant crucial warning. We are a trial. Don't disbelieve.
Okay, that completely reframes their role. So, under this view, the harmful magic, the Sur,
that was being taught by the shaitans, the devils mentioned earlier in the verse. People then maybe misused the knowledge Harut and Marut gave or mixed it with the devil's teachings.
leading to bad stuff like breaking up marriages.
Right. And it's really important here to mention the term Israeliyat.
These are stories or traditions that might have come into Islamic thought from, say, Jewish or Christian sources.
Exactly. The fallen angel story is often categorized this way. There's even debate about whether it came from Jewish midrash or if maybe the midrash was influenced by these Islamic tales later on. It shows how ideas moved around.
So this second interpretation puts the focus back on human choice, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's not about angels falling, but about the difficulty of being human, facing temptation, and making the right choices with dangerous knowledge, much more about human responsibility.
And the layers of interpretation just keep going.
Right.
There's even a linguistic angle.
Yeah, some point to a reading attributed to Hassan al-Basri. He apparently read the word not as malakain, meaning two angels,
But as Malakain.
meaning two kings, just a slight vowel change, but it implies they might have been powerful human rulers in Babylon, not celestial beings at all.
That's fascinating. Shows how deep the textual analysis goes.
And remember that little word wama and what? Some scholars use that to really drive a wedge between the evil Sur taught by devils.
And the knowledge imparted by Harut and Marut.
Exactly. Suggesting the angels taught something more neutral, a kind of science of the unseen, which could then be misused for evil purposes.
And then you have the Sufi mystics, like Ibn Arabi.
Ah, yes, they take it in a completely different direction, metaphorical. For Ibn Arabi, Harut and Marut might represent, say, theoretical and practical intellect.
And their sorcery.
Is seen as the things that cloud the heart, preventing it from connecting with the soul. So the separation between husband and wife becomes a metaphor for inner spiritual disconnection.
Wow. From literal angels teaching magic to an internal spiritual struggle. That's quite a range.
It really is. So let's broaden out from Harut and Marut now and look at magic in Islamic traditions more generally. It's important context.
Because belief and practice related to magic, well, they're incredibly widespread, historically and even today, in many Islamic cultures.
Right.
A part of everyday life.
Very much so. And it's not all seen as bad. You have the concept of baraka.
Divine blessing. A kind of positive, permissible, supernatural power.
Exactly. So there's a crucial distinction made. Licit or allowed forms often involve calling on God, angels, prophets, saints, considered miracles or blessings.
Whereas the illicit stuff, the Sur, is black magic, calling on harmful spirits like jinn or demons.
Right, and that's forbidden precisely because the intent is to cause harm.
Now, the Quran itself, we touched on this, it generally talks about Sur negatively. Hidden knowledge, taught by devils, leads to damnation.
Yes, the tone is definitely cautionary, if not outright condemnatory of Sur. But interestingly, as you noted earlier, the Quran doesn't seem to explicitly forbid all magic or detail a specific punishment for practicing it.
And kind of paradoxically, the Quran itself is seen as a source of good power, of baraka.
Absolutely. Certain chapters or surahs like Al-Falaq, Al-Fatiha, An-Nas are very commonly recited for protection, for healing.
People even use the physical book, the Mushaf, as a kind of amulet sometimes.
They do. And let's not forget Prophet Suleiman, Solomon. In Islamic tradition, he had extraordinary powers talking to animals, commanding jinn. So the relationship with the supernatural is complex.
Okay, so what are some concrete forms this takes?
Yeah,
Talismans seem huge.
definitely. Talismanic magic using symbols, letters, numbers. The amulets often have God's names or names of angels or prophets inscribed on them. It's like a prayer given physical form, a supercharged prayer.
And the designs themselves changed over time, from older symbols to things like pentagrams, the Seal of Solomon.
Yes, and things like magical squares became incredibly popular too, believed to hold specific powers.
What about finding things out? Divination.
That's Qanat, trying to get information about the unseen or the future. And the methods were incredibly diverse.
Like reading oil on water, smoke patterns,
Right.
animal entrails, dreams.
All of those, yes. Plus more structured things like physiognomy, reading character or future from someone's face or body. And astrology, ilm al-nujum, was a major field.
Was any of it considered okay or legitimate?
Well, sortilege, Quora, which is casting lots, was often seen as a legitimate way to seek guidance. And for health, there's Rupya.
The Quranic treatment, reciting specific verses for healing.
Exactly, which, beyond the spiritual aspect, is also recognized as having real psychotherapeutic benefits for people.
Now, to really understand the Harut and Marut stories setting in Babel, we should probably dig into ancient Babylonian magic itself.
Absolutely, because in Babylon, magic wasn't on the fringes. It was, as scholars say, an integral part of everyday life. Magicians were accepted, even feared. Ordinary people dabbled.
And it was all tied up with their gods and the stars.
Are inextricably linked. Rituals called upon specific gods associated with planets and constellations, like Venus being their goddess Inanna or Ishtar, Jupiter being Marduk. Stars were seen as active forces, mediators, judges.
What about plants? Did they use herbal magic?
Oh, definitely. Herbalists were key figures. They classified plants sometimes as male or female based on potency. They had specific rituals for harvesting them, maybe drawing a magic circle, talking to the plant.
Sounds intense. And they had different specialists.
Yes, the Ashipu was the main ritual magician, also a diagnostician. The Ashu was more like the pharmacist, preparing the actual remedies.
And Babylonian divination, was it just predicting a fixed future?
Actually, no. That's a key point. They believed predictions weren't set in stone. You could perform rituals to change the outcome, to avert a bad omen.
What counted as an omen? Big things like eclipses.
Yes, but also really mundane stuff, like if a pot creaked in your house, that could be an omen. They had elaborate systems like reading sheep livers.
Sheep livers, okay.
Especially lamb livers, yeah. That was a major form of divination. And they even practiced necromancy, consulting the spirits of the dead, the Atemu.
So if you got a bad omen, what could you do?
They had specific counter rituals called Nimburbu. These could be simple gestures or really extensive ceremonies, like one called Maklu, burning, used specifically against black magic.
Which brings us to Babylonian black magic itself, Kishpu.
That's the term, practiced by the Kashopu, male, or Kasheptu, female. And this was serious business. It was punishable by death.
What did it involve?
Curses. Things like sympathetic magic, using little figurines that incorporated something from the victim, like hair or nails, cursed food or ointments, trying to manipulate spirits of the dead against someone.
Sounds nasty. Did they have ideas about timing, like dangerous days?
They did, often linked to the phases of the moon. And stones and amulets were vital too, believed to hold magical properties derived from stars charged by starlight, not necessarily by spirits dwelling in the stone.
It's clear these ideas about magic have incredibly deep roots. So, fast forward to today. How do these ancient beliefs play out now in Islamic cultures?
Well, as we mentioned, magic often gets really intricately interwoven with religious practice. That line between what's acceptable religious devotion and what's forbidden magic can become very blurred.
And this blurring has led to problems, right? You mentioned a crackdown.
Yes, it seems to be a relatively recent phenomenon, particularly since around 2013. We've seen much stricter laws, arrests, and even executions for magical practices in certain places.
Like Afghanistan, Gaza, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia is a prominent example, yes. This stricter approach is quite different from how things were often handled historically in many of these same regions.
Some of the modern stories are just staggering. Like Saudi Arabia banning Harry Potter.
Yes, seeing it as promoting sorcery. And they actually formalized an anti-witchcraft unit back in 2009.
An official unit, wow.
Leading to arrests, charges, and yes, even beheadings for sorcery. And tragically, reports often indicate that many accused are vulnerable people, like foreign domestic workers.
That's deeply troubling. And it's not just street-level stuff, right? You mentioned Iran.
Yeah, that bizarre case in 2011 where advisors to President Ahmadinejad were arrested on sorcery charges, claims about consulting a sorcerer who was supposedly contacting Israeli and U.S. jinn for intelligence.
It sounds unbelievable, but it happened.
It really highlights how these beliefs can surface, even at the highest levels of government.
And that Dubai story. The bank manager defrauded of millions through alleged black magic.
An absolutely astonishing amount, $242 million. The manager was convicted, and there were reports he even underwent an exorcism.
And in Pakistan, the black goat sacrifices, even by presidents.
That practice of slaughtering a black goat to ward off evil is apparently quite common. The fact that high-ranking officials, like a former president, reportedly did it daily shows how deeply embedded these protective rituals can be.
These examples really bring home the ongoing tension, especially around that concept of shirk.
Exactly. Associating partners with Allah. From a strict conservative viewpoint, seeking help from jinn or other entities, even for something like healing, is seen as shirk.
Which is considered the most serious sin in Islam, right?
Yep.
Because it compromises God's absolute oneness.
Precisely. So this view clashes strongly with some traditional healing practices that might involve interaction with spirits or jinn. It's a major point of contention.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We went deep into the Harut and Marut story.
Seeing how that one Quranic verse led to such wildly different interpretations. Fallen angels undone by temptation versus infallible guides exposing evil.
And we looked at the broader world of magic and Islamic traditions, its connections back to ancient Babylon.
And how these beliefs persist and cause real friction, even danger, in the modern world.
It really shows how ancient stories, ancient verses, when interpreted and reinterpreted over centuries.
Continue to shape beliefs, fuel practices, and even spark these intense modern controversies. They're not just dusty old texts.
So maybe the final thought for you listening is this. How do your interpretations of foundational stories, maybe religious, maybe historical, maybe even family stories, how do they shape how you see the world?
And maybe even influence the choices you make? It's something worth thinking about.